This is the Average Guy Network, and you have found Home Gadget Geeks, show number 322, recorded on August 10th, 2017. Here at Home Gadget Geeks, we cover all the favorite tech gadgets that find their way into your home. News, reviews, product updates, and conversation, all for the average tech guy. I'm your host, Jim Collison, broadcasting live from the AverageGuy.tv studios here in a beautiful Bellevue, Nebraska. We've just had a string of days. Typically in August, it would be awful here in the state of Nebraska, but as we're getting ready for this eclipse coming through, we have some beautiful weather ahead of it. Of course, we host this show with the world-class show notes at theaverageguy.tv. Don't forget, you can also join us on the mobile app. A lot of you are doing that now. If you just want to jump in and get right to the podcast or listen live, you can get that available on your iPhone or Android device. Easiest way to get it, homegadgetgeeks.com. We'll get you there, the big buttons to get it done. Don't forget, we're commercial free now on YouTube and Spreaker as well. And if you want to support the podcast and all the things that we do, you can go through our Patreon link. It's now available at theaverageguy.tv. If you just look for the Patreon link on the right-hand side. Then don't forget, we're anti-Amazon now. Not really, but they've kicked this out twice from the affiliate marketing program. And so some of you asked me this week, hey, where'd the link go? We had to take it down. I took it down. Didn't matter anymore. And so if you want to support the show, do that through Patreon. We appreciate that. All right, we've been talking about the show for a couple of weeks. Excited about it, and we're excited about it because we're going to talk about storage. And if you've been listening to the show for any length of time, you know that my background comes out of the Windows Home server. But today we've got with us two individuals. One, the original founder of ReadyNAS, Paul. Paul, welcome to the program. Appreciate you coming out and doing this.
Hello, Jim. How are you? I'm excited to be at the show.
You bet. And then Tony's with us as well. Tony's his sidekick, we'll say, for the evening tonight. And Tony, you'll provide the comic relief, right? You're gonna set him up. Paul's gonna knock him out. Is that what we're gonna do?
Pretty much, yeah. My job is to make him look good.
That's it. Well, I don't think tonight you'll have to work too hard. We in a little bit of a pre-call, we kind of sat down and Paul kind of talked me through the history, his history and all the things that he has done. Paul, what I'm most interested in, so ReadyNAS was a product that's been out there for a while. And so what I'd love to do is just kind of ask you the question of how did you get there? When did you get there? And why did you get there? Like, what were you thinking in those days? It was early, NAS devices were, not a lot of people used them or knew about them. Certainly they had not made their way into the home for when you got started with it. But take us back to the beginning. What got you going with ReadyNAS and why'd you do it in the first place?
Sure. In my previous life, I was actually a chip designer. So we designed processors, fairly large processors. And we had to use a lot of big files, many files. And we have to find a secure place to store it and be able to share amongst a group of engineers. So we use NAS. And at that time, NAS was very, very expensive. The NAS we used was from NetApp. It was a $60,000 box. Mm-hmm. So, as a user, so I appreciate all the good things that, a NAS will provide you, be able to share on the network, very large storage, and it's very secure. It's very durable. And then something happened. As you can see, once in a while, some technology would happen and kind of provoke your thinking about the things that you do. Right. So at that time, if you still remember IDE, parallel ATA, the 40-pin, 40-pin connector, 16-pin bus, and all that stuff, was about to be replaced by SATA. And with SATA, with the differential pair of differential signals, transmit, receive, we actually could get higher bandwidth than all 16 pins of parallel IDE bus can give you. So that was very interesting. So that technology was coming out, I knew that SATA drive was, at that time was going through early releases. Also was happening, which is the availability of gigabit Ethernet as a lower priced network interface. So you put these things together, SATA. Okay, now I finally have a way to do, drive trays easily, hot swap, etc., and gigabit Ethernet. So wow, I can do that $60,000 box basically in a smaller box, and probably very cost effectively.
Did the
So that
chips
was the beginning of, yeah.
Paul, did the chips that you were working on at the time, you said you kind of you got into this on chips, and did that have any influence on, because the power consumption in the chips kept getting less and less. Although in those days we look at those chips that you guys were originally working with, and they're big power hogs today, right? When we think about chips, but did the chipset have an influence on you, as well as thinking about now you have these new drives that you can hot swap, and we have lower power chips? Was that like peanut butter and chocolate, two great tastes that taste great together?
Yeah, so I have to mention the third component, which is the processor, right? I mean, with the NAS, basically it's a dedicated computer. You need a processor, you need all those DRAM and all that to run Linux, etc. So I was a chip designer, and I just decided at that time, well, okay, to do this small form factor NAS, I was looking around for a processor that I could use, but I very quickly decided that there was nothing powerful enough to do the kind of stuff that I would like to do, which is to be able to do RAID, handle gigabit at a wire speed and all that. So I said, why don't I design a chip? So our first project was actually the world's first network storage processor with SATA interface and with gigabit Ethernet all built in. It was a very aggressive project, and we did it with the ASIC approach. We use NEC as the foundry. The processor architecture we chose was actually, if you remember, in the early days of Sun Microsystems, they have the Spark architecture.
Oh yeah.
With all that beautiful register window and all that stuff. It was just, it's just great for doing RAID processing. So, and we just decided to use the Spark. Spark is an IEEE, Spark instruction set is an IEEE standard. So you could take that without paying any royalty and all that. And we use the Spark instruction set, add the MMU, do the cache controller and all that, together with the SATA interface, gigabit Ethernet interface, and our own dedicated RAID logic. So RAID is mostly done in hardware, and that's how we get. Remember the chip at that time. It doesn't have all the advanced process technology of today. So it ran about 280 megahertz, which is a far cry from today's 2.8 gigahertz.
Yeah, right? For sure.
But with 280 megahertz and also with multiple Spark processor inside to handle different tasks, and the RAID controller that we have, RAID hardware, we were actually able to do 4 channel of SATA coming in, RAID processing, and all that. I would have to say, after we did this chip, for about a good 6-7 years, we don't see any other chip, any other general purpose processor that can beat the performance of this one, even at a much higher clock rate. So that was the challenging chip project we did as the first step of creating ReadyNAS.
And what year was that? Let's kind of set a stake in the timeline.
Yeah.
What year was that?
Okay. The year was very interesting. We started the company in the year of 2001, about 3 months before 9/11 happened. So, and this is my third startup. And I would have to say the first two were so smooth that I didn't learn anything. Although they were also successful, I really didn't learn anything compared to what I had to go through on this one.
And what had you done for the first two? What were those two startups?
Those were all chip designs.
Okay.
I was in audio and multimedia chip designs.
Okay.
So so on this one, because you have to go through a very difficult financing situation, you just have to be very resourceful, and doing the chip design wasn't exactly the easiest project from a technology as well as financial point of view. So to be resourceful, to be resilient, it's very character building. And thus I always, when I share with people, I always encourage people to do some kind of a startup or be on your own. So it builds character, right? It matures you as a person. Mm-hmm. And I learned almost everything I know today from that startup.
So with 2001, with 9/11 happening, and then really the internet tech bubble had kind of was showing some signs of weakness, if not, it was already declining when this
already bursted.
Yeah. So it kind of a double whammy. So getting started, not a lot of funding. How'd you kind of get through those times to get it going? I mean, it seemed like everything was failing at that point. How'd you keep it rolling?
Yeah, so I got some angels who kind of believed in me because that was my third startup. So I had some track record that definitely helped. And also I funded part of it myself. However, it was very difficult. I mean, because everybody in the investment community kind of froze. It wasn't that hard in 2002 when everybody was expecting, oh yeah, we're gonna blow over this in no time, and we're gonna recover. But in 2003, that's when people saw no end to the tunnel. It was that bad. I mean, people would meet up with you just so that they can, so the VCs would meet up with you so that they can just write their weekly reports, right? But with no intention, no investing. So it was that bad. And then it wasn't until early 2004, finally we got Series B. And it was a very educational experience for me.
Yeah, well, and probably faith building, to say the least, right? Of holding on. Yeah. When you first rolled, were you mostly thinking in the enterprise space? Most of our listeners today kind of know the storage around that we do in the home space. But were you focusing on the enterprise, or were you trying to do much for the consumer?
No. Right from the beginning, we know we want to do a desktop NAS for the smaller guys. For the we see the digital camera coming up, a lot of photography, a lot of professional amateur photographers having access to the same camera, and they are producing a lot of photos. Even some home video guys showing up. We know from an application point of view, we know the market should be there. Every VC we talk to would tell me, oh, I could use one at home. So we know everybody needs this. So the market was very clear. The desktop NAS, a large trusted place on the network for you to keep your most valuable data. That's what we set out to do.
Did you find, even though you were concentrating on the consumer market, that like small business, I think video production shops, photographers, did you find those were most of your customers in those early years?
Yeah, we definitely established a beachhead with the photographers. We were just loved by the photographers. They were looking for a place that's bigger than the USB drive, faster than the USB drive, more reliable than the USB drive to keep their data. And we just came in. It was interesting. There was another company doing the same thing, almost at the exact time. And that company's name is Buffalo Terrace Station, if you remember that one. I would tell you, I was kind of, right about to announce our ReadyNAS product. Buffalo announced their product. I still remember TerraStation 1 TB, 4 times 250 GB drives, right? 4 times 250 GB, except theirs were IDE drives. I think they started with IDE drive. Later on they also moved to SATA drives. So, and what was most was kind of demoralizing for me at the time was they announced that 1 TB at $999. And that I was hoping to get a better margin for all our chip design, all our efforts. So I was going to price our product as $1399, and they are $400 below. That was demoralizing. But in retrospect, now very quickly I realized that was the best thing that happened to us. Because with $999, 1 TB, Buffalo TerraStation overnight created a fast-growing NAS market, desktop NAS market. And together, not hand in hand, but together, ReadyNAS and TerraStation, one on performance and features, the other one on price. We just together created that market very, very quickly. So, and my strategy, marketing strategy was, as long as a reviewer wants to review product for product comparison for a new category, we just send them a box. And of course, we win every review. So they sell at $999. We always sell at $1299, and we coexisted very well.
Yeah.
So that was one interesting aspect I learned about business, which is sometimes to have somebody, to be in the battlefield together with you.
Yeah, we know when businesses get out there alone, they also get slow and sloppy. And so having somebody else to kind of look to see, hey, they're doing this, we got to think about doing that. They've added this, the consumers kind of pick up on it. What year was that launch for you? We
launched in 2005.
Okay. Yeah, because we began, I think I began looking for and thinking about the home network. That 2004, 2005, I remember some of those products, but really got interested in the Windows Home Server product, which Microsoft tried to, I think, capitalize. It may have seen what you guys were doing with the desktop NAS. I don't know what year Drobo was out there. They've been out a while working in this space. I think that was later. I have to look that one up with those guys.
2006, yeah.
6, yeah. But they all kind of come. I mentioned to you, we have a lot of listeners that have the Synology device or the QNAS. I'm sorry, QNAP. There we go. QNAP device that's available. What was the point when you knew you made it? What was like, certainly you had to feel, maybe not, but do you ever feel like at some point this is working, you can kind of rejoice and kind of have a party that like, hey, ReadyNAS is going to make it. It's going to live.
Well, we were a very technology-driven company. So when we first came up with and released the X-RAID technology architecture, X-RAID is expandable RAID. And that was unique to us. Nobody else had it. Everybody else had to, kind of migrate from RAID 1 to RAID 5, and then when you add a drive, you have to go through the migration of all the downtime and all that stuff. But with X-RAID, you just, it's as simple as be able to insert that disk tray, and then you get your expanded volume.
Right.
So X-RAID was so unique that everybody loved it. And then at that time, we knew ReadyNAS was a winner. And X-RAID concept was, continued on for a very, very, very long time. And later on, when the processor got so powerful, when the x86 got so powerful, all that, you don't need, even you can do RAID 5 migration with software fairly smoothly then X-ray, doesn't hold that advantage anymore. But X-ray was very useful for a long time.
Paul, you made a statement earlier that hardware RAID's better than software RAID. You
Right.
made that statement earlier. Why is that? Why, you would think either or, but why is hardware better than software?
Well, that's not true anymore. But at the time when software, with the CPU was not as powerful, definitely hardware RAID was, make you do that migration a lot faster, and just when you add a volume, expand your volume, you definitely want to make that as quick as possible. And with the X-ray, it was almost instantaneous.
So at some point though, someone came calling to say, hey, we may want to, we may want to acquire the project that you had. When was that? How did that go? How did that feel to sell a company to Netgear, and why?
So in 2007, Netgear also announced their own storage product. So they announced a storage product called SC101. It was a not exactly a NAS. It was more like a DAS on the network kind of product. Initially, they also do well because the market was there to take on big storage. However, very quickly they ran into a lot of support issues, not working well, et cetera. So since they are in the market, they understand the dynamics of the market, the size of the market, the potential of the market. So they quickly looked to us. They knew we were one of the leaders in the marketplace. And they approached us. They knew the potential. And our perspective, we would like, one of the goals of the team was really to see the technology being used by a lot of people. I mean, today I take great pleasure when I see somebody at random places, talking to them and find out they are ReadyNAS users, and and their ReadyNAS still working after 9-10 years. It just gives us kind of great pleasure. Or you go to Fry's and see your product selling on the shelf, and that's just great. So what Netgear has brought us is a worldwide channel. Merged with Netgear, it grew very, very fast. Very quickly, ReadyNAS became the #1 small medium business NAS, desktop NAS. Later on, we expanded our line to include rack mount, 1U, 2U, plus other larger devices.
It is interesting as these, because you mentioned the 1 and 2U devices, as these kind of home storage devices have grown, they have migrated into the enterprise. I'll be honest, I would have thought it would have gone the other direction, that you guys would have started large. Always easier to sell. You could get better margins in the enterprise. Working in the consumer market can be really, really difficult. And you, for a decade, you lived that with storage. I've watched this market for the last 10 years. It's finicky. It's complicated. The support is difficult. You're talking about people's data, right? Which
right.
Someone puts all their pictures on the device and the device
right.
fails, right? I mean, sure, they should have backups and all those other things, but it's always always a really super kind of personal. Got to feel pretty good. It's got to feel pretty good for you. I was just out at Amazon and put in ReadyNAS, and there's just a ton of product there that's co-branded, right? Netgear, ReadyNAS. Kind of powered by, so to speak, right? And so there's a lot of that's got to be pretty cool. I don't know. I've never had a product that's made its way to Amazon, so that's got to be pretty cool, and a pretty big variety that's out there. So the channel, you talked a little bit about the channel, about production. Have you is that completely? Have you completely handed? Are you out of that completely at this point with Netgear?
Yeah, I'm out of Netgear. I've left Netgear more than 5 years ago. On a personal reason, my dad got sick, and so I just decided to to retire and take care of him. And thank God he was all okay.
Yeah.
After a while.
Anything you would
So
have, Paul? Anything you would have done differently? When you think about your year before we go forward now, anything you'd have done differently in those years? Thinking back of like, man, I really wish I would have done X. Now knowing,
yeah. Should we have sold to Netgear? We merged with Netgear in 2007, and guess what happened in 2008? So you never know.
Right.
I mean, but desktop NAS was a strong market. It continued to grow when we were at Netgear. But Netgear is a good company. I enjoyed my time over there. I stayed almost 5 years there, and continued to grow the business and to grow it to be number one in SMB NAS. So it was a very, very good experience.
Yeah. So Dennis in the chat room says he has a 2-bay ReadyNAS that's 8 years old and is working just fine.
What model is that?
He'll throw that in there. They're about 30 seconds behind.
It's probably a duo. It's probably called a duo.
Could be. A lot of consumers get in on that 2-bay, right? We've seen QNAP has one of those now. Synology has one of those.
Right.
And those 2-bays are really handy. It's a good entry point for a lot of folks to jump in. Drashna also says in the chat room, 2008, what a year. Yeah, let's not remember those 2008, 2009. Those were some awful. Yeah, Dennis says, yes, that's what it is. Whatever you said.
Right. So our very first model before we merged with Netgear was called the ReadyNAS 600. And that is very, very old. It doesn't have the best industrial design, but it's just rock solid. So I don't know why the power supply still works after all these years.
So you're telling Dennis he better make sure that data's backed up. Is
well,
that
the first thing that fails would be, I would say, it would be the of course, the drives you need to replace, but we have such a nice rebuild algorithm, so you can just continue to not only rebuild the drives, but also you can upgrade to larger sizes. But the power supply, it's not built to last forever. However, whatever we did it right, and those boxes just last a long time.
They just keep hanging around, and that's a good thing, right? I mean, that's a good thing. It's interesting.
I think we use the best capacitors. That's probably why.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That builds customer loyalty. I can't tell you those products that I have sitting around that just continue to work. That it is one of the problems with technology, though, right? I mean, you get any more longer than 3 or 4 years, and the functionality, even though the hardware still works, you might have trouble with apps or with the OS, or the company is gone, or right. I mean, they don't survive as long as they used to, or they change, or they pivot so fast that sometimes you just can't get support for it anymore. And so it's not like a car, you just keep driving. Although maybe for some people they can. And then for some, sometimes firmware doesn't come forward, and so that doesn't support the larger drives. Did you think back in 2001 when you were kicking off ReadyNAS, do you think there'd be a day when we'd be talking about 40 or 50 or 60 terabytes inside a NAS box sitting on somebody's desk? Do you ever think that'd be a reality?
No, I mean, those are sizes even at the time. So yeah, but now everything is possible now. Yeah, so the mindset has changed.
Yeah, no, it has indeed. And of course, hard drives continue to get at these ridiculous sizes. Do you think, I hear a lot of consumers, and you're in this space, this isn't necessarily related to what you do, but because you're an engineer, I'll ask you this question. Do you think as hard drives get larger, I've heard a lot of people concerned about having that much data in one place, like on one drive. And they think it takes a long time to get it backed up, or it takes a long time to get it to the cloud. Do you think there's a spot here where we've maybe overshot on hard drive spaces where they're just bigger than they need to be at the moment, and the demand or the bandwidth needs to catch up?
Yeah, I would say the bigger the drive is, and if all the data is on that drive, then the risk is higher.
Yeah.
I mean, before the show, we were joking, right? I mean, you can part with your money, but you probably cannot part with your data. And now a lot of people just have data on one drive, and that is, very dangerous.
It's super easy, right? Just buy one drive and back everything.
Right.
Buy
Right.
one 6 terabyte drive, and for the average consumer, they can back everything up to it and then not think about. We're going to talk about this some more when we talk about your new company, but they don't think about getting it to the cloud or getting it backed up or
Right.
getting it in a spot where they can. And there's some complications because we're creating larger and larger files now, way larger than we used to. When we think our video production, some of our audio stuff, some of our photos, right? I mean, it's just the data problem is just larger.
And RAID can give you false security. The scariest thing about RAID is that when one drive fails and you need to rebuild that drive, and then you find out drive number 2 has a hidden error, gone.
Yeah.
That is why you use RAID 6, if you have more than, 4 or 5 drives. So RAID is there for reliability. However, it has its risks in the way it's designed. And the larger the drive it is, the scarier it gets.
Yeah. No, I think for a lot of people, and we see this a lot, it's just you have to be careful. As these drives have gotten so big, it's almost gotten ridiculous. We used to celebrate the 2, now 3. Now at the 6 and 8, you're kind of like, maybe I don't know if we necessarily need them that large, at least at the home. Yeah, the enterprise might be a little bit different, but it is. Hey, Tony, you doing all right over there? We haven't talked to you in a while.
Yeah.
I just want to. I appreciate you holding on, Tony. Let's
sit here and look pretty and not.
Yeah, Tony.
Engaged.
Let's get to know you a little bit. We've heard a lot about Paul. Just give us a little quick. How did you get involved in storage? What's your story to get there to Morro Data?
For me, I actually came from software development. I spent 15 plus years developing software. The latest project I was working on was actually in data asset management. And so from that perspective, we were heavily involved in storage. We did create a data management tool for managing files. And the biggest question was always, how much storage do I need? And then for our customers, they started out, we actually were dealing with photo files, but then at the same time, they started to bridge into video files. And then we also started to look at the problem of dealing with bigger and bigger files. And a real question for them was that these type of enterprise applications, it was the enterprise space, was not just storing the data, but they actually had to move it around. And so they had to transport it between different places, had to be accessible to different folks. And so that was a big piece about how to store, how to scale that data was really a big deal. And then how to have that data in multiple places at once, and then how to secure it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds very similar to where you're at today with this product and what you guys are trying to do. So that sounds like a pretty good match. I have to admit, when I came across your product, and I forget how now it showed up in an email, and I think I responded to it. The reason I really got interested, and you guys are a little more focused on the small and medium-sized market when we think about enterprise, but I think it could have a home use as well. I think you guys don't talk about that enough. There's probably a group of enthusiasts as we talk about this. We'll get some feedback from the chat room and see today. But one of the things that I really liked about the product is its simplicity, its lack of a hard drive in a lot of ways. I mean, it does, but it's not like you're jamming hard drives into it, which is pretty interesting in itself. And then it plays in a space, Paul, on the site, it says NAS reinvented. And so talk to me a little bit. When you say reinvented, Paul, what do you really mean by that? I mean, how is it that much different from what you were doing at ReadyNAS?
Yeah, so ReadyNAS and NAS in general is very useful. I mean, it sits on the network. It can be shared by people. It's very high performance. However, you do have to maintain the hard drives. You have to back it up if that holds your primary data. And sometimes you think it's better to do offsite replication. And if you have two offices that need to share data, then it gets very complicated. To replicate two NASs or three, in between two offices or three offices, it becomes an IT nightmare. So understanding all those problems and what causes it. Also, with the advent of cloud storage, it just made me rethink, what NAS should be like. The NAS interface is great because it's very fast, it's local, shared by a group of users. It's great collaboration. And even for single user at home, it's just so easy to use. But all that drive maintenance, so I have a concept, that, remember I said SATA was the emerging technology that kind of got me thinking? The new emerging technology that got me thinking again is object storage in the cloud. If you use Dropbox, whatever, chances are you already use object storage. And object storage is beautiful in that it scales very easily. It's, the cloud is reliable. So naturally, NAS becomes, well, why don't we turn the NAS upside down? You still keep the interface, but vaporize all your hard drives into the cloud. The media, the spinning disk is gone. It's all into the cloud. And in the cloud is the object storage that you can scale, unlimited. And you don't have to do the maintenance. There's no hardware failure anymore and all that. But how do you keep the performance? Then you use a cache in our cache, cache drive, and then the cache shouldn't be too small, so you have to go to cloud all the time. So we choose to use a 1 terabyte cache to start with, and everything you interact with this 1 terabyte cache, you feel like you are working with a NAS. There's no difference. The interface is exactly the same. The performance is probably even better because we have versions that use SSD, so it could be even faster. And what you don't know is the cache will upload the files to the cloud in the background. Now, this is very interesting in that if you just use cloud storage as is today, like Dropbox, the performance you feel is pretty much depends on how much upload bandwidth that you have. We all have the experience of waiting for the upload to complete before I can take my computer away. Now, with a cache drive, all you have to do is just shuffle the file into the cache drive at gigabit speed, and then you're done. And let the box do the hard work or retry for you. So it's in a way that I was describing in two ways. One is versus the traditional NAS, you don't have to do the drive maintenance. You don't have to worry about getting another box when you run out of space. And versus today's conventional cloud storage, the performance is just tremendously faster. If you have 10 megabits per second upload today, then at gigabit you are 100 times faster. So all those things seem to make sense to do an upside down NAS, or at NAS you level up, right? But this is not the end of it. I also knew that the replication between multiple offices was such a hassle. And like you said, we like simple IT. Everybody appreciates simple IT. So now that the data is in the cloud, how do I make it very simple so that it doesn't matter where you are, how many branches you have, everybody can share the same copy of data and accelerate it in their local cache. Thus, we also designed a global file system. It's a Morro global file system. And in this global file system, it handles all the synchronization of data between multiple sites. It handles, all the notification, which when data is updated, and then, how the cache would be updated as well. Also, it has to be robust enough to be able to handle multiple people writing the same file at the same time. How do you resolve that and make sure, you don't get something funny? Spend a lot of time doing that. Actually, this time around, we spent a good 3 years doing the R&D of this global file system, plus other things, just to make it work. I would say, from an effort point of view, the Morro data compared to ReadyNAS is probably almost a 10x effort.
Wow.
Complexity-wise.
Yeah, it's impressive.
It's a lot of interesting stuff that we did with this global file systems. Then you're able to share files with very high performance, with no question and all that.
Yeah, it's a lot like, and I compare it to the Microsoft's OneDrive, in the sense that you have your files local, and then it shares it up to the to the cloud, and then it can sync with others. But you add this other element of additionally to it, where unit can sync to unit. We're going to talk about that here in a second. I want to talk about the units. Tony, I want to bring you in because I know you did a great job with me when you met with me on the phone. I'm actually going to show this box because when you shipped it to me, I wasn't quite expecting this. So I opened the box, well packaged, by the way. And let me make sure I've got this up on the screen for everybody to look at here. 1 second. And so I get the box out, and it's an Intel NUC. Like I was expecting, I don't know what I was expecting, but the NUC is a kind of a favored device among us Gadget geeks, right? It's inexpensive. It's got a lot of diversity. There's a lot of things you can do with it. But Tony, talk a little bit about, you've got 3 different models. So I'll show these. Maybe we can walk through a little bit of what you have and the advantages to them as we think about the different configurations.
Sure. So we do have 3 configurations of the device, and we starting out, I think the first one you have on there is what we call the G40. And the G40 is the way we're presenting the devices is just based on sort of like how many users and how much information and what you're trying to do capacity wise. They both have the G40 and the G80 are differential in their performances. So the G40, it has a Celeron processor in it, and then it has a 1 terabyte hard disk drive, and that's sort of the main differentiator. So it comes in at a lower price, $499. It's aggressive for the home user, and it's good for up to like 20 users on your system. The second model we have is the G80, and that one runs on an i3 processor. And this one, the main differentiator is that it has a 1 terabyte SSD drive in it. Yep. So the performance on this is much greater. It's also a little bit smaller. And what I like about it is that these drives, they both sort of disappear from your desk, and you don't really think about them. They're so small. And this one we say is good for up to 50 users. The performance on this is much better. And then the one that we just introduced, I think is the third model there, is is the T600. And the main thing we're doing here is that we've been talking with different customers, and what we've noticed is that some people just need a bigger cache drive. And this is actually more related not to the size of the data that you have in the cloud, but it has to do with the size of the files themselves that you're working with on your local network. So in the instance of media entertainment, when you're dealing with video files, they're often fairly large. I mean, we're talking about 0.5 gigabyte to a terabyte. So in that space, we wanted to provide users with the option of having much larger cache drives. This is scalable up to 8 terabytes. So this will give you a much larger cache. If you're a home user and you get the T600, you're never going to egress, right? All your data is going to be on your local drive.
Well, you never know. You don't know some of my users. I'm not going to lie. We've got
maybe that's a challenge we'll have set up for them to say, how in what ways are you blowing up an 8 terabyte cache?
There are I think some of my listeners have 20 or 30 terabytes worth on the, we Unraid is a popular, or has been a popular topic here that we've used, that folks have used, and you can scale those up pretty large, right? So when you say scale it up, so it says you said up to 8 terabytes. So does it come configured with less, and you can put more in? Are those SSD? How are those spinning drives? How are you doing that?
So yeah, we're doing them with spinning drives at this time, I believe. Yeah. And so yeah, I mean, with this model, you wouldn't do anything less than 2 terabytes, obviously, because we have the 1 terabyte model in the G40 and the G80. But we wanted to make it configurable for the users. So, but primarily we're looking at folks really using up to the 8 terabytes, just going with the 8 terabytes right out of the gate. Because again, it has to do with the file size. So what we tell people is that a good ratio for the cache drive to cloud, although cloud is infinite. We say it's infinite, it's a 1 to 10 ratio is what we recommend, just for performance purposes. You want to make sure that you're able to get your data and that you're able to see everything. Now, what's beneficial with the cache drives, of course, and this is something that we find we actually have to say a lot of times over and over again, is that it's not a one-to-one sync, right? You're actually storing much more data in the cloud, managing much more data than what's actually on the cache drive. But to the end user, you're seeing your entire file system as if it was all local.
Yeah, no, a good thing to remember that you're treating that, and let's just use the home version, the one I have the 40, the G40. Yeah. So a terabyte of cached space locally, which I love, because I'm creating, gigabytes worth of podcasting files, both audio and video. They can get up, they can get pretty large. And so those are always available to me as I keep them on the device. But then behind the scenes, those are automatically being pushed up to Amazon. Let's talk a little bit about your pricing really quick, so people kind of understand as we think about the levels that folks would come in on this. Tony, how is this priced, and for the consumer, how do they buy this besides buying the unit?
Okay, so actually what's great is that something has changed for us, and I think Paul will get into this, but originally we had started out with using Amazon S3 as our primary object storage for the users. And so what we do is we have an access fee for the device. That's because we manage and do all the syncing for you. And then we have for the Cloud NAS business, and this is not for the consumer, for the Cloud NAS business, you could use the Morro storage, and so it's $39 per terabyte. With the access fee at $89 starting, you get 1 terabyte of Morro storage and egress download.
Yeah.
However,
go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, so I was going to say, so on the business side, the big change that you've made with the announcement of this integration with Backblaze, though, is I think you've made it really attractive to the home user when we just think about the Cloud NAS. So can you talk a little bit about that plan?
Right. So that's yeah, exactly. So what happened is that Backblaze recently rolled out a product. So last year they opened up their product to have an object storage as well. And so their price on the storage is $5 per terabyte per month. But what's even more aggressive from them is that they've dropped their egress prices down to 2 cents a gigabyte. So for you to egress 1 terabyte of data, it's $2 a month.
$20.
Sorry, $20 a month. Sorry. So, but the benefit of that is that at the $5 per terabyte, the storage costs have really come back down, because Amazon's at $20. So really, we're at a fifth or fourth of the cost of Amazon S3.
One of the things I did while I had I've had the unit, I've been testing it for about 45 days now, was to connect it to OneDrive. And that actually, for me, that worked out really well. Because I'm a Microsoft MVP, I have a fairly large, reserve over there, so to speak. And so while I was using, your original plan, and it was moving to Amazon as well, you were keeping track of that first terabyte for me. I could set some drives to just go, and maybe we can walk through this here in just a second, but I could set some drives to say, hey, I also want you to sync with OneDrive. That part worked really well. That was, for me, that was a really interesting option, to be able to push those over there in a user case scenario where I might be a big OneDrive user, and would need access to those on OneDrive. So that worked out. That piece was very, very attractive to me. So I love those various options that you guys have to be able to do that. You also have Dropbox integration. I'm assuming I didn't set that up, or maybe I did, but I think it's just a couple clicks, right? And boom, it's going to it. You can sync that to Dropbox as well. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So we have a feature called Echo, and you can go ahead and sign up for Dropbox and then put your account information into our software and then attach that to a share, and then everything that goes into that share will be synced with Dropbox or OneDrive.
Yeah, no, it works great.
Yeah. Now today, what we've recently announced last week is the integration with Backblaze. That was one of the targets for the prosumer, and another option that we have for prosumers, as far as being able to cache your cloud storage, is that we also have a plan called the Cloud Drive, and that's really for the home user. It's a single drive use, and that one you can use either Dropbox or OneDrive personal as your file store, basically, and we're synchronizing with your Dropbox or your OneDrive account.
Yeah, Darashna in the chat room is interesting. When we think about the larger data sets, this still gets pretty pricey as we, for users that have large amounts of data that they are pushing up to the cloud. When we think about cost effectiveness for the home user, for the average home user, I still think what you guys are doing at that, because I think the average home user, a terabyte's a lot of space, to be honest, right? I mean, I when we get into the pro groups for the photographers and the videographers and then the businesses, all things change, but then the pricing model changes a little bit, right? They're coming at this from a professional standpoint and they're paying money to make money, where the average home user isn't. So I still think we need to be really careful differentiating when we think about your guys' plans. Those lower plans, and even the ability, Tony, I think I was talking to you when we were saying this. Microsoft just recently put out 5 terabytes of storage on their regular plans. That's like $100 a year. So, you think, yikes, that's a lot. 5 terabytes for the average user. If I was going to use your device here, and I wanted to go at the consumer level and then use OneDrive as kind of the cloud storage, I'm in, and it's not terribly expensive. So up to 5 terabytes, that's a pretty good option. I want to walk through the. You can do it on your end, or I can do it on mine. But I do want to walk through your dashboard a little bit.
Yeah, and I saw this comment here about the pricing. With the cloud NAS, our access fee is $10 a month. Our access fee is $30 a year. So with an annual subscription of $30, you can accelerate your OneDrive interface. So, sure, you'll get your 5 terabytes in the cloud, and then you'll have your cached data locally. So that'll really accelerate. And if you're in your home, you've got like 4 or 5 users, and you've got your photos all shared. You can even link it up by having multiple accounts on the same cache drive, the same Morro account, just in different pools, and then you'll be able to share all your files. So that's really great.
And then before we move on, can you talk a little bit about the technology between syncing of devices? So you'd mentioned if I had a device in San Francisco, I had an office in San Francisco and an office in London, and I wanted to sync the two. What's the advantage with a device like this?
Right. So what's interesting about this is that, people often ask, what is the benefit? Because we actually perceive to be, cloud as this place for you to have your centralized file, right? But I think the main thing to remember is that whenever you deal with the cloud, you do so with this interface over a synchronization service, right? So Dropbox, or your HTTP protocol, just going through a web browser, it's really just synchronizing stuff with the cloud, right? So really, like, the way we like to talk about is with the global file system, you're centralizing your files, but we're handling the synchronization with the cloud. So for you, you're actually interfacing with your data through a file server interface. And so I like to point that out. So it's not that we're pushing all the data out, it's that you're using the different drives to go to one place to grab the data. And the reason this is very different is that when you're doing a synchronization, normally what you have to do is push all your files to all the different devices, right? So all your devices would have to have the same amount of storage available on them. And then when you synchronize, you go to one place and then you push it out to everywhere else. The files get copied everywhere. So there's a lot of bandwidth being generated, and there's a lot of stress being put onto the main device. What's different with us is that we have a sync engine. we do a synchronization, we don't push the whole file. The cache drives, it's a 1 terabyte cache drive. It doesn't hold everything. But we are able to use through stub files, you can see everything you need to see about the files. And then you only download the file when you need it. So if you're a user in San Francisco and you upload a file and you save it to your cache drive, then someone in London does see that the file exists, but they would only download that file if they needed it. Now, the other benefit of that too is if you're working in separate offices is that when you go to download that file to London, normally with the cloud service, all 10 would have to go and download that file for themselves. With a cache drive, the cache drive downloads it once, and then the 9 other users can access the file directly over the LAN. So it's much faster. Also reduces a lot of your bandwidth usage.
Paul, is there any, when we think about conflicts, how are those conflicts? We know in sync there's always conflicts. It's the nature of the beast. How in the global file system, kind of how are you handling that?
Right. So we spend a lot of effort to make sure we handle the conflict situation right. So if 2 files arrived at the same time, we support versions. So 1 file will be saved as a version, the other one will be the current copy. And so we never destroy your data. The data is always there. And we also make sure that the right file is synced across all your global sites. So in other words, there will never be this version in site A, the other version in site B. And also on top of that, we do file locking. So if the application supports file locking, then the other sites would only see the file as read only. So through these different ways, we make sure that it's always consistent, it's always expected. Yeah. So today we do have quite a few cloud storage users already. They use other solutions. And number one, they have there are 3 situations they come to us. They have a syncing problem, that there's just too much congestion on the internet bandwidth or within the office. Because like as Tony explained, when you save to the cloud and then everybody else needs to download, that's a lot of congestion. So and also number 2 is the syncing algorithm of some of the solutions are not as efficient, and so generating a lot of unnecessary computing either in the cloud or on the local client PC. And those things are been resolved greatly by the NAS concept. So having the NAS cache in the cache drive just solves all those problems just right there. It's very simple IT. And then for file locking, which traditional NAS cannot do at all, for the file locking, because we have our master copy in the cloud. So everything is just synchronized with the cloud. So we know exactly the status, who's opened it for editing and all that. So we can do the file locking correctly. So once you do the architecture right, then things seem to become simpler. And this is what we did. We make sure that we use the cache to solve the performance and bandwidth problem, and we use the cloud to solve all the sync and lock problem. So it's really we like to say is the best of both worlds.
Yeah. One of the things as I looked at this, there's in the enterprise, we sometimes have a problem, and it's getting bigger and bigger, is that we're pushing videos to our end users. And those can create, especially across the, across the WAN, going out to pull. If you have a whole bunch of users trying to watch the video all at the same time on another service, it's got to pull all that in through your pipe. And having those files closer to you and available to you in a cached storage like this would be a lot better.
Right.
In that kind of scenario, do you think how many this is why you recommend a certain number? I think that went down, but I think you have, what's the first level, up to 20, and then I think it goes up to 50. Are you guys confident that if I had 50 users streaming the same video from the device, it would be able to handle it in that scenario?
repeat that? I killed the sound by accident.
Oh, that's okay. No problem. If I had, let's say I have, I've got 50 users on the mid-level box, and they're all trying to stream a video that's sitting in cache locally. Can it scale up in that way? They could all watch that video all at the same time?
Yeah, I think so, because we have the SSD and we also have the i3 in there in the G80. So that box is designed to do that. And Samba is pretty optimized for network sharing.
Yeah,
So
I'd like to make that box my Plex box, to be honest with you. So I'm gonna put this request in. Would you guys make the Plex app available on that box? Because I think that would make it. It's not too different from my own Plex box today as far as size goes, but mine's in a PC that's this big, and yours is in a little box that's a
right.
So I'd kind of like that. Tony, can we run through a quick demo of the dashboard? And it may be easier if you just run it from your side, if you can do that.
Sure.
But I'd love to take a look at the dashboard just so folks get a peek at what the interface could look like.
Sure, I'm gonna switch it over. So it's gonna be sharing this main screen. Can you see it?
Looks great.
Okay, great. So I'm gonna log in here as an admin. And so with each account, you have your own portal, and we call these a subdomain. So the one I have in the demo here is called Bigger Inside. And I'm just gonna log in and give you a chance to see how I've got one pass set up for here. And so once you're logged in, you're gonna see a dashboard. And the dashboard just gives you an overall picture of what's happening with your system. We've got some statistics down here showing you how much data has been going through. I actually did a fairly large file transfer at this point in time. You can see how much data was passing through. This was on a 20 megabit line, and so at 9.4 gigabytes, you're about 19 plus megabits per second. So it was utilizing most of the pipe, and no one complained about it. No one said, "Oh, internet seems really slow today." So I was pumping data through here for a couple of days. The other thing you're going to get an overview of is how your system is laid out. So, like we said, we have two cache drives. The third one up here we call the team portal, and that's the web-based interface. So because our master copy is in the cloud, you can actually access your files through a web-based interface. And next week, can I announce the connect? Next week, we have a desktop application that's coming out that's also got this web-based interface built into it, so you can take that with you on the go and then be able to access without having to go through the website to get to those files, but also be able to interface with your cache drives, make it easy for you to open those drives. So I've got a demo here. We've got a drive in San Francisco, a drive in London, and you can see which shares they have access to. We have permission settings at the gateway and the user level. And then we also have the shares partitioned out into the different pools, which controls where and how those files are being stored. So, people ask the basic questions: how does it work? How do we do it? So we have all the standard features built into it. You can add users. You have the standard users, and then you have administrator users. Administrators, of course, have access to manage the system. What's nice is everything's centralized through the web interface. So like you've got drives in different locations. Your users are in different offices. You do all of that management from the cloud. You can be anywhere. We also have groups, and so you can assign users to different groups, and then you can use the groups to do user permissions as well. What I'd like to walk through is just kind of show the devices real quick here, how they're represented. So we have the devices. As I mentioned, you can do device level security. And so this drive has access to all of the shares. And then the London drive has access to only a couple of the shares. And I'm going to actually open up one of them right here because we're going to do a little demo for you on that. So that share is now available to the London drive. And this is what we call like a location awareness security. So you can only access the data if you're on the same network as the drive. And then finally, here is what we wanted to show is the file system. And this is what we call the global file system. It's all managed in one place. So this is the Morro storage. And we have different pools in here. The pools is where you manage how and where the files are being stored. Primarily right now, we're managing two main features, which is the version control and then prefetch. Version control is exactly what you think it is. You can set up how many versions of the files you want to keep. You can do 330 or keep all versions. One of the things we like to bring up about versioning, obviously, is dealing with file conflicts, but also with the big hot topic is ransomware. So if you're keeping versions of your files, when ransomware, if you do get hit by ransomware, it encrypts a file. So as soon as the file is encrypted, you've got the latest, best copy of your file stored inside of our cloud. So the RPO on that is very low, right? Because that's a file you've just worked with. You don't have to go like most people do with ransomware. You've got to go back to some kind of offsite backup, and usually that could be like a week old or something like that.
Tony, two things we were talking about. I'd mentioned to you is this was an enhancement request. Could we do a one-click restore everything? That ransomware idea of hey, I need to get they took them all, they encrypted them all, and now I need to get them all back. Do I have that? Would that ability come to be able to just restore them all?
Yeah, that's something that I've talked to folks about, because one of the customers that I work with, that was his first question, was about ransomware. And it's because we're storing all the versions, that one's just strictly straightforward. Luckily, none of our customers have been hit yet. So but we would add a feature that says basically, hey, give me back every single file up to a certain date, right? So give me the last good copy of file up to today, right? And then you would get that version of the file back.
You can codename that upgrade after me if you want. And then
sure, yeah, the gym, right?
And then the second one is, I'm assuming everything's going encrypted.
Right. So I see that question coming up too. Right. So with the cloud NAS business and enterprise, the files are encrypted. So we on the Morro storage, we do a few things actually.
Over to the dashboard, if you would, for me. Sorry.
Oh, sure. Sorry about that. Yeah, I got you on the screen here. So there's a couple things that we do. I was doing this like a CEO. It's really weird.
I'm not that good. I'm not that good looking. I'm just saying. I'm not that good looking.
Yeah, so we do a couple of things with the files, and this actually helps with bandwidth. Someone asked about in a previous conversation today about WAN acceleration. So the couple of things that we do for the large files is that we do chop them up. So that allows us to upload with multiple threads. We compress them so that you don't have to store the full file size in the cloud, and then we encrypt them. And so all the files are encrypted when the Morro storage, they're all encrypted at rest and in transit.
Okay, cool. Now, some good technology behind the scenes. You have an apps tab there. Are you doing, we think about a Synology and there are millions of apps. Are you guys
we're just
thinking about that?
Yeah, we're just getting started with our apps. Like you mentioned, the first two main apps we added were both to the same feature, which is Echo. And Echo is really great because a lot of these storage systems with the security, you don't just open this up.
Sorry,
to anyone,
I'm
right?
not sure.
Sorry, you invoked my Echo when you said Echo. Sorry.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
I'll mute her.
Echo, buy Morro cache drives.
Too late, I already muted it.
Okay, so so with Echo, you can share, if you've got already systems set up where you do share files through Dropbox or OneDrive, then you can just add those shares to those folders to a share. And then anything that's copied into the share is then synced two ways with Dropbox or OneDrive. And then the other app we have right now is Slack, and this is for the IT folks because there's a lot of alerts and messages that come up, and so you can add a Slack channel and then have those alerts sent to your Slack channel. So you get mobile alerts for all the logs. We do logging in here as well.
Yeah, for the real nerds who want to go in there and comb through the logs to see what's going on.
Yeah, you can take a quick look. I mean, we keep track of events that are happening, any errors, warnings.
I did not look at the logs one time while I've been
that wasn't that important to you, right?
Yeah. You mentioned Drashton is asking the question about versioning. So you have 30 and 300. Why not just make that customizable by X, so to speak? I could put any number in there to allow me to version that.
Well, I think that for us, the philosophy, of course, is around simple IT, right? So we just want to keep it really simple. And we picked those two numbers because we just thought they were sort of a good in-between set between no versions and all versions, right? And maybe Paul can speak a little bit better to the decision behind that.
It's a month and a year, right? Is kind of what you're shooting for without saying it that way, right?
Right. I mean, along with it, we also not only we do versions, we do very smart, we do intelligent purging. So if you generate, say, a lot of edited versions, we would know, try to keep your older ones, say, at a weekly level or even at monthly level, while keeping the most recent ones at daily level. So not all 30 versions are the same. We will try to do it intelligently so that you have as much of a history as possible.
That's good to know. Yeah. Yeah. I could use some smart versioning, you know, because I just keep everything. And so it might make sense to have some. Tony, you're showing the managed version piece there?
Yeah, I just want to show you the versions. I mean, this is just a very simple demonstration, but if you do have versions, you can go in there and then you could just recover them based on, you know, what you're looking for.
Yeah, they're pretty standard, and that's a great feature to be able to go in and pull those down. I found I went back through in my testing. I just went and did some stuff and then tried to recover them. Super simple. So very, very easy, very intuitive.
Yeah.
I'm going to flip over to my screen really quick, and I'll show.
Okay.
You guys have kind of the corporate setup. Let me see if I can get to more just kind of the home. You know, here's the home look.
Yeah.
At this point, so going out to the cloud, I've got the global pool. I divided it out into two separate folders. If you look at my file system here, I just kind of created a podcast share and a video share, and actually gave the video share was too big. I didn't want to push that to my OneDrive, so I did not share that one. I think, let me make sure. I did not see the echo, and I might have actually taken both off at this point. But the podcast share had the OneDrive echo because those files are a little bit smaller. Then the video share was left only going to Amazon, and so it just gave me kind of a way of separating those two out in my file system, which is kind of cool. It just represents. Let me show that really quick here too. Hope I'm not giving anything too much away. You never know what you're showing on these kinds of things. So let me I'll share the whole screen with you there. There we go. So when we look at the file system, it just comes up as a network drive. I named it tag, and there's the files right there. So they're just available from once it's set up and connected in, it works just like any other file structure that's there, and you see it just like anything else. So pretty easy to use. And you can see here's some Home Gadget Geeks episodes that I moved some Word docs over. I brought some raw files. At one point, I brought some raw files. The test was those raw files are the biggest ones. And so I kind of wanted to see how you guys talk a lot about it speeding up things on the network. And so I kind of wanted to see how that would work. And so moved some of those larger raw video files over. And yeah, they're really speedy. I mean, I think they're 3 or 4 times faster than my Drobo. And so that for me, that was it. I was getting regular network speeds, which was pretty cool. So, Tony, if you want to flip off the sharing, is there anything else that you wanted to share on your side from a screen?
Yeah, I think one of the things I did want to share, and I'm going to try this again. I know it kind of dropped out our network a little bit, but actually I might be able to show it here. Let me see if I can bring up this shared drive here. Oops. So I think I'm not sharing let me get it up first before I actually
No, you're sharing it right now. It's okay.
Oh, am I?
It's okay. Yeah. We're seeing it. It's okay.
I think I was sharing that whole time you were talking, so I'm a little bit.
No, I flipped the screen over to me. So
okay.
Good, yeah.
So just one of the things I wanted to bring up was that when the file is not cached in, you see this X. This is a good example of that. So basically, this file is not actually on this drive. And so when we double click it, it'll download that file. But to the end user, it looks like all the files are in one place. And I think that's just one of those things that's really kind of like we want to drill home for people, is to be able to see how that works out. And so this is like, when you drop a file in there, you're going to see it pop up right away with that stub file. And then when the users want it, they can go ahead and download the files.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If you're a OneDrive user, get used to this. You guys are doing it, or I should say Microsoft is now doing it a lot like you guys are. And so they didn't do that before, and they're moving back to it. So if you're a OneDrive user, you should find this actually pretty familiar, in the way you see it. So
yeah, and there's a couple questions on here I think we should
yeah, drop back to your video for me if you could. So again, I'm not that good looking, so
there is that. Yes, there we go.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. So bandwidth control for uploads.
Right.
Do we have that?
Yeah. So
I like Paul's right.
For bandwidth control,
we're adding a lot of stuff. I'm just not sure what we're allowed to say about what.
So we do two things. We do a scheduled sync. So you don't have to sync all the time. You can decide that, hey, I don't need to sync in real time and sync only after 5 p.m. Or you sync every other hour. So you can do that. We give you a very flexible sync schedule control. And the second one is we do bandwidth limit. This one is coming out. It's not in the current release yet, but it's coming out pretty soon. So you'll be able to specify a megabits per second, and then we just limit to it.
Great. Good. It sounds like you guys are iterating pretty often. I've had the device just over a month, and there's already new. I was getting ready for the show, and I saw some new firmware that was, or a new update that was available for it. How often? What's kind of your development cycle? How often do you plan to roll stuff out, or do you just make it available as it's available?
We do kind of a not real major, but kind of an intermediate release on a monthly basis, and then probably on a weekly or bi-weekly basis to minor releases. So I think between 2.0 and 1.0, that took about 4 months. Yeah, that would be a major release.
Yeah.
We don't want to do it too much. We're not Firefox or Adobe
or Chrome. They just do it behind the scenes. They're like on version 10 million now. You don't even know it. What's so if there's interest, if folks are interested, of course they can go to tomorrowdata, morrodata.com if they want to get that. What's the best way to contact you guys if they have additional questions?
Well, I mean, they can on the website, we've actually got a chat widget there for them to jump in and go ahead and just start chatting. You'll most likely get me answering. There's a couple other folks who do that as well.
Today, I was this morning as I was getting ready, I noticed there was the update. I logged into the dashboard, so I was trying to think, I should probably update this for the show, and it wouldn't work. And so I pinged Tony. I didn't know. I went in the chat room and I said, "Hey guys, I'm having trouble. It shows the blue thing, but nothing's happening." And so that was early this morning, early for you guys, early for me as well. And then you got back to me via email. By the time I got to work, I had an email from you, Tony, saying, hey, that had come from the chat service. So that's really cool. We like that. So if you're on the site and you want to get to them, you guys are pretty much monitoring that, probably not 24/7, but pretty close. And that might be a good way if they have questions or if they have anything they want to get to you, they can just drop it in the chat bot and it'll take care of it. That'd be
Yep.
Okay.
That's right. Yeah. Someone will pick that up. Yeah. That's the easiest way. There's some forms you can fill out on the website as well.
I just go to the chat room. You guys were super responsive that way, and that worked out. That worked out well for me. In the end, it was my fault. I had the power turned off, and I had not. I had been messing with it before in the cloud, and this is one of those kinds of things. I was interacting with it via the cloud because my files were in the cloud, and so I was like, "Oh yeah, everything's great. This is still working, right?" Kind of thing. And then, stupid me, I look over at the switch, and it had gotten shut off. And so Tony was like, "Hey, why don't you just turn it on?" Imagine that. You turn it on and the update works. So that was a little embarrassing for the IT guy to get the, is it turned on? Yes, that happened to me today. And yes, I'll admit it. Well, Paul, Tony, thank you for taking the time tonight to walk through this. It will be fun to watch you guys kind of grow. One of the things I like doing the best is these emerging companies that have kind of new ideas or doing new things, and we get them early. And then We did this with Jamie over at ring.com, the doorbell guys. We interviewed him before he made it big. I don't think I'd ever get him back on my show. So we'll hope that you guys make it so big that I can't ever have you back on the show, because you'll be too big of a deal to be able to do that. But we'll wish you the best of luck on that. Thanks for taking the time. Thanks for staying late with me. And it makes it a little easier on the West Coast. But thanks for doing that. Full disclosure, Morro Data did send me a unit for this evaluation. I'll just say that we're supposed to write that in the blogs when we do that, but I will say that here in the program, and I appreciate you guys providing that for me, and we'll shut her down and get them shipped back to you, and appreciate the review unit and a chance to take a peek at it. So anything else that I missed, Paul, Tony, before we go, anything I missed?
No, there's a couple other questions, but we can do that afterwards.
Oh, yeah, we'll save for some post-show. How's that sound?
Okay.
So,
thank you, Jim. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise.
Thanks.
No, Paul, great to we could geek out on the story for a while. I had to kind of cut it back because I thought, well, we need to cover some of the product. So I appreciate you going through the story.
We hope to get back on the show later, in the future to give you some update.
Just whenever you guys have an update you want to share, just let me know, and we'll bring you back on, and we can cover it. So I appreciate it. Let me do a few items, and then we'll go into the post show. So hang tight. Just a reminder for everyone listening: if you want to support the show, if you want to do that, we always appreciate that. And then for those of you who have done that through Patreon, thanks. But you can head out to theaverageguy.tv, click on the Patreon link. And $1 to $5, we don't ask very much, but if you want to support the show, a great way to do it. You can also, I should remind you, that's the only way to get the post show. So we're going to answer some additional questions in the post show. We didn't set it up this way, by the way, but that post show is available only to our Patreon subscribers. So if you want to get access both the audio or the video or both, join us on Patreon as little as $1. And each week I ship just the post show to you. Sometimes it's funnier than the show. So you might, just some good stuff goes on in the post show that doesn't always make the show. So if you want to do that, we appreciate it. Don't forget, send me your questions or comments around what's going on. If you have somebody you want featured on here, like we're doing tonight, send me an email, jim@theaverageguy.tv. Don't forget the averageguy.tv platform, both web and media hosting, powered by Maple Grove Partners. Get secure, reliable, high-speed hosting from people that you know and you trust. And of course, that's Christian. Christian almost made the show tonight, and then Gary showed up and couldn't make it. So, but that's Christian. For more information and plans that start as little as $10 a month, maplegrovepartners.com. And then don't forget to download the Android or iPhone app for our show as well as available for you. And we thank LastPass for their sponsorship of the program. They always are such great partners to what we do here at Home Gadget Geeks. And they, of course, have sponsored that app. Head out to lastpass.com, and their plans, $12 a year, not too bad. And you can find the app, homegadgetgeeks.com. We're here live every Thursday, 8 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern at theaverageguy.tv/live. Got a couple great programs. Joel Rushworth is coming back. He's been on the program before. He's an MVP out of Canada. So we'll probably be talking some Windows stuff next week. But we're back live, 8 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern, out here at theaverageguy.tv live. And with that, we'll say goodnight, everybody.